with that, I want to say thank you and welcome. Buenas noches a todos. Bienvenidos, familia SHPE San Diego. I really want to say thank you so much. And I know it's the first month of the year, and we haven't seen each other for a couple months. So I want to say Feliz Año Nuevo, Happy New Year to everybody. I know it seems like, oh my God, it's almost the end of January, but it's, we haven't seen each other, so it's still Feliz Año Nuevo to all of you. Okay, thank you once again. Welcome everybody to this great session of SHPE San Diego GBM. It's called Setting Goals Without Stressing. We have a special guest, and we are very happy to have everyone here with us once again. Today, we have a great treat for you. And as we begin the year, we believe that this is going to be a way to share some mental health strategies on how not to stress when you're actually going to set goals for yourself as we get started in the year. But before we get started, I want to acknowledge, first of all of you for being here, and also all our board members. Without any order or preference, I have to acknowledge Saul Montaño, Kelvin Diaz Reyes, Kevin Webb, Carlos Duran, and Maria Rios, as well as our special officer emeritus, Mr. Mike Cruz, for all their continuous support and commitment to SHPE San Diego and SHPE overall. So thank you to all our board members. A few house guidelines. If we can go to the next slide, please. Please turn off your microphone if you are not speaking. And remember to be courteous. When you turn on your microphone, remember to be courteous and to be polite to anybody and everybody else, to the person asking the question. We would definitely like to see you. So when we ask, or if you don't mind turning on the camera throughout the meeting, that would be awesome. That would be great. There will be a specific moment where I will definitely ask Saul if we can take a group picture. So Saul, near the end, hopefully you can remind me of the group picture if I forget to ask you. Use the meeting chat functionality to comment about anything that you hear, and also to ask questions. We will be monitoring the chat for a Q&A, but there's also an official Q&A opportunity near the end of the session. So just keep that in mind. Next slide, please. A couple updates. Since we last met, we had a December 10th get together. For those of you that were able to go, thank you so much for attending. For those that were not able to go, giving you an update as to what we did. This is a little snapshot of what we ended up having. We went to a happy hour because of the pandemic. We decided not to do the full-on posada, just to keep everybody safe, right? So we went to Nova Brazil. We had a great time. For those that actually went, there's a group picture that we have there. So Nick, keep tabs in our social media. Check us out in our webpage, and keep tabs on the newsletter that we have going on a monthly basis to be aware of events that are coming up. Next slide, please. Okay, last time I had updated you that the website for SHPE Connect to register was going to be changing. They postponed it, and it still has not changed. So I encourage you to be patient and bear with us. It'll be coming soon, and I'll let you know, or we will update you when that change does happen. Next slide, please. Now, if you see this flyer here, this is what we use to promote our special GBM for this month and our special guest. Once again, feel free to share thoughts in the chat. They will be periodically read throughout the meeting. Next slide. Now, I have the great pleasure of introducing Dr. Stephanie Palacios, who is generous enough to be here with us, and she is a first-generation Latina Americana, tricultural. She is Colombian, Mexican, and American, and she is quadrilingual, which means she speaks 4 different languages. Her own intersectionality and privilege instilled in her a strong sense of advocacy for others and an awareness of the need for equity and opportunity. She learned to comfortably acknowledge when she is in the dark and problem solve to turn on the proverbial light. Her mission is to empower others through organizational consulting, group training, and coaching. custom workshops, speaking engagements, and individual coaching by tapping into over a decade of training and expertise she has in teaching mindfulness, stress management, resilience building, and value alignment. She is a survivor and trainer. In 2016, she survived a near long abduction and made the difficult yet medically necessary decision to take a medical leave from her doctoral program to recover from injuries that spanned across 13 medical specialties. Her passion to uplift and help others help their sense of empowerment from overcoming was strengthened by her own journey of healing. She finished her doctorate and made a dream of hers and her immigrant family come true when she got into Harvard Medical School for her postdoctorate, when she completed a dual specialization. I want to welcome and have a round of applause for our special guest, Dr. Stephanie Palacios. Welcome. How are you this evening?
Hi, Lazaro. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing really great. I'm really excited to be here with everyone. And yeah, please feel comfortable, whatever resonates for you, camera on or off. I love being able to see people's faces, but at the same time, I know we'll be going through a PowerPoint together as well. So whatever resonates. But either way, I'm so happy to be here and share my expertise with you all. And as Lazaro mentioned, I'll be looking at the chat. And Lazaro, please jump in if you see that I'm missing anything. If anyone has any comments, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them on the spot, but we also have time set aside at the end for a Q&A too. So you can hold on to it for the end if that's more comfortable for you. So yeah, I will go ahead and share my screen. We can get started. And Lazaro, I see you on my screen. If you could give me the thumbs up when you can see the screen, that way I know everyone else can see it. Fantastic. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So as he said, today's workshop that I've custom designed for you all is focused on how to set goals without stressing out. Goal setting is often something that people find particularly difficult. And I think we all know that in the beginning of any new year, there's always this uptick of people setting goals, whether it's, diet, wanting to get back into the gym, wanting to start a new hobby. Really, whatever the case may be, the new year tends to motivate people to start to goal set. And typically what happens is by February, March, most people have given up on those goals. And so what I hope to do today is impart some insight with you all that can help you with that goal setting to make it much more likely that the goals that you're setting are realistic, that they're ones that you can accomplish and you can continue to work toward. So with that, my formula to it that we'll be focusing on today is cultivating a grateful mindset and looking at the ways to set these goals, which would be through setting up methods of accountability, methods of holding intention in what you do, and then cultivating compassion for yourself through this process, because it definitely takes a lot of compassion. We're imperfect human beings, so just accepting that right off the bat, right? So as Lazaro said, I'm Dr. Stephanie Palacios. I am a Latina first gen Colombian Mexican American. I'm also a trauma survivor and thriver after having survived a week-long abduction that nearly ended my life in 2016. I returned after a long medical leave back to the field of clinical psychology to help others. So I love sharing my expertise from my training, from my work, from my own journey of personal healing, to really just help inspire other people to also overcome their darker moments. And my focus is particularly on stress management, mindfulness, and resilience building. So what do I do today? I'm a keynote speaker, coach, trainer, and consultant in those areas that I mentioned. I'm very excited to have started my own business firm this year, or now I guess, last year, end of 2021. And it's Stephanie Palacios Consulting, LLC. Still working on the website, but hoping it'll be live soon. In addition to that, I also hold a role as a mindfulness teacher with Harvard University's Center for Mindfulness and Compassion, where I'm a contractual teacher of mindfulness there. And I am also a co-founder of an LA-based tech startup. So a lot of exciting things going on. In addition, I'm also on the advisory board for the organization This Can Happen. I would say in a nutshell, my work is really focused on helping people to improve their emotional intelligence, to help learn how to get their mind to work for them as opposed to against them. And I do have a niche in working with high achievers, with first generation college and grad students, and specifically within the Hispanic and Latinx community. So the research that I did during my doctorate program and for my dissertation focused on Hispanic and Latinx entrepreneurs in the US. And I did a pre and post test of a stress management workshop that I designed for them. So all in all, we're looking at about 11 years of training and experience that I've had so far in this field. I've developed a little over 800 mental wellness workshops and programs to date and worked across a number of different settings, spanning from educational institutions like universities to corporate organizations, hospitals, government organizations, and nonprofit organizations as well. My training included years at Northwestern, Johns Hopkins, and then I did my APA doctoral internship at CU Boulder. And lastly, last year, I finished up my postdoctoral fellowship at Harvard Medical School, where I got a dual specialization in mindfulness and primary care behavioral health integration. So it's a little bit about me and where I'm coming from and where what I'm sharing with you comes from. It comes from all these years of training and experience, particularly working within the Latinx community and with high achievers in that realm, which oftentimes include engineers. So I'm hoping that a lot of this will resonate for you today. And so this is our agenda. How do we set positive goals that are both personal and professional? And we're going to look at the logistics and the mindset behind helping you to achieve your goals. So I want to take a moment to just acknowledge this idea of the achievement-oriented mindset. It's something that I saw over and over again, especially working with engineers, especially working with architects, just in general, students at universities who are high achievers. And there's something to be said here, right? Like this mindset is what got you to where you are. It includes everything from the grit that you apply toward the projects that are ahead of you, the goals and dreams that you have. For a lot of us, it means bootstrapping to get there. It goes even further than that, though. It's often including the idea of having to figure out everything on your own. Oftentimes people who are achievement oriented also tend to want to do it on their own too, because there's some achievement in that, right? And knowing that you got there on your own. However, that can sometimes add additional barriers and obstacles as you move up the ladder, as you move up through school, as you go into your career and launch into your career. And when you're in your career, as you want to climb upwards. We start to realize that it's more and more about how you're relating to others. And then we realize, oh, wait, this is about how I think about myself, how I think about others, how I think about the world, and how that's expressed. And all of that is infiltrated through this achievement-oriented mindset. Then we add on the layer of being Hispanic or Latinx identified. And a lot of times that adds this layer of added pressure of wanting to achieve even more, of wanting to be, worthy of the efforts of our parents, of our grandparents, of our ancestors. When we're at home hearing families say, you're the first to go, right? And then we look out and we realize we really are. We're the first in our family. A lot of times we're the only in the room that we're in, that we inhabit. And so that can further feed into this idea that achievement really is what brings you value, and achievement is what is connected to your identity. We're going to talk about this a little more toward the end as well, which is what happens, what are some dangers there when that is so deeply embedded. So we want to do both today. We want to see how can we use this mindset to your advantage, use these strengths and skills that you have taken so many years to hone, and then also how can we be mindful of the ways in which it can get in the way. So first, my biggest tip I would say when you're starting this off is identify your obstacles. Now, obviously, there's no way to identify every single one, but the more that you can be aware of what might be coming your way, the better you can prepare for it. So this is an invitation for a moment. Go ahead and take out something to write with, or if you prefer to take notes on your computer, however you may prefer. But take a moment and consider what logistical obstacles tend to get in the way when you're goal setting. So I'll go ahead and give you a moment to reflect on that. Okay, and now I'm going to share what research finds are the most common logistical obstacles that are faced in goal setting. The most common one is time management. So we're going to take a look at that. A lot of people oftentimes realize, oh, shoot, I've mismanaged my time. I thought this would take less time than it would. Now I'm having difficulty meeting deadlines, or I'm pulling all-nighters in order to get this done. And so that can oftentimes get in the way of reaching your goals. And that can really be a demotivator as well when you realize that you're not hitting those goals at the timelines that you set for yourself. Hand in hand with that, the next most common obstacle that we see is prioritizing tasks. So a lot of times there's this tendency to use this false sense of urgency and just spread that across the board so that everything suddenly feels urgent and important. And that's a really common trap, especially for achievement-oriented people, because if you want to do really well at everything, everything becomes important. So how do you prioritize? Now, aside from logistical, there's another genre of obstacles that we tend to see most often, and those are emotional and mental obstacles. So take a moment and again, jot down what emotional, mental, mindset obstacles tend to get in the way for you. Okay, and I will go ahead and share again what we see most often. And this is specific to my work and what I've read on engineers. Sense of overwhelm. It's the number one most reported emotional and mental obstacle. It's again, this idea, I have so much to do, feeling this pressure to get everything done, feeling this pressure that everything's important, having realized I may have miscalculated the amount of time this is going to take. It's only natural that the response to that is going to be a sense of complete emotional overwhelm, which goes hand in hand with fear of failure. The next obstacle that we tend to see the most often, perfectionism, tendency toward perfectionism. And perfectionism has a close cousin that often makes itself known, which is procrastination. And so we start to see this loop, right? The overwhelm leading or being, what's the word here? It like combines with perfectionism. That leads to procrastination, which then will only feed into the poor time management. It will inhibit you so much that you have difficulty prioritizing tasks. And that goes on. And it's what we call a positive feedback loop. And this is the most common presentation that I would see when I worked on college campuses in the counseling centers, and also outside of that, just as a therapist as well, and as a coach. So yeah, I mentioned the procrastination makes itself known as well. And so this leads to a really important point here, which is the number one reason why people give up after having set goals, even after working toward those goals, is unrealistic expectations. And so the irony is that a lot of times what we find is that it's not so much the task at hand that is the problem, it's how you have or have not broken it down into realistic milestones that you can then attain. And there's not just a logistical reason behind this, there's also a mental reason behind this. The more successes you can feel, the more successful you will then feel, and the more capable you'll feel of being able to attain that goal, which then again will feed into this beyond just the self perception. It's the motivation and it's the resource finding and creating in order to reach those goals. So, really, the question just becomes, how do we get more of that? How do we help you to create this positive cycle where you can feel more motivated, where you can feel that these goals are attainable? It's realizing, when are your goals too lofty? When have they not been broken down enough? And so this is a reminder, small victories are still wins. And that is oftentimes at the theme, one of the themes that come up when working with engineers. And it's this reminder, right? Small steps make it easier to see the progress that you're making. It helps to keep your motivation up, and it helps to help you stay on track. So this may be familiar to some of you. It may be new to some of you, but there is this acronym and this known way of breaking down goals. It goes by the acronym of SMART. So it's SMART goals. I have seen over and over in my work over the past decade that these really do work. So I tend to, not recreate the wheel, but use what I have seen be really effective if it's applied well. So I want to share it with you all. So we'll go through the acronym. The first letter S stands for specific. So you take your big goal, this idea that you have of something you'd like to accomplish, and you start breaking it down. And you break it down as much as possible. And every time that you break it down, you're using this criteria. You're making it something extraordinarily specific. Next letter is the M. So you're making it measurable. How will you know when this has been accomplished? How will you know that this is something that can be checked off? And if you're having trouble making it measurable, that may indicate that it's still too big or that it's not specific enough. Then you keep going down the list. So we get to A, is it achievable? Now, this doesn't only mean in terms of, time frame, but this also means resources available. What do you need to make available to yourself in order to be able to achieve this small, specific, measurable step? Do you need to reach out to someone? Do you need additional support? Do you need to read a chapter of a book? Do you need clarification on something? Do you need a certain tool? So literally listing those out and then making a plan for those, for making sure that you have those ready. We get to the R. Is this small step realistic? Now this is, looking at everything else that's going on in your life right now. Is it realistic that this step is the size that it is right now? And then the last one is the time frame. So I really like to encourage people to buffer themselves. It's much preferable to say, hey, look at that. I actually finished this ahead of time. Fantastic. Than saying the opposite, right? Then feeling that you're slowly slipping into a crisis because you didn't give yourself enough time. And now you have the other deadlines that are coming up as well. Now, there's a hidden agenda with this T piece that oftentimes also ends up being something that we work on together. And that is boundary setting. And it's also advocating for yourself. So a lot of times it's, well, if I'm being honest with myself, I know how much time I need for this. And then the second part of the conversation comes in, right? And there's so many things that fill in the blank there, but I really want to impress this person, but I'm hoping to ask this professor for a letter of recommendation, but I really want to impress my boss or my coworkers, but I already promised this within a certain time frame that I'm now really realizing is unrealistic. So this is where the conversation comes in. What would it be like to let someone know, this is how much time it's going to take me, and getting yourself prepared to receive what may be surprise, what may be pressure to do it faster, and what would it be like for you to say, yeah, I hear you, and I want to be realistic, and this is how much time I'll need. So I want to encourage you to take a few moments, pick a goal that you have set for yourself. And now this could be, as it could start out bigger or smaller. It could be, this is my goal for 2022. This is my goal for first quarter. This is my goal for the next month, for the next semester. Pick one and then go through and see what this is like for one aspect of it, because obviously we need a lot more time to really flesh it out. But consider breaking it down, one aspect of it, and then see what it's like to literally write this down in the acronym form. So make it SMART. What's a specific piece of this goal that's measurable, that's achievable, that's realistic, and assign a time frame to it. So I'll go ahead and give you all a few minutes to do that.
And one of the things I'd like to add on this one is if you're having a little bit of a difficulty, think about a book. We all say, oh, I'm going to read a book, but we don't really put a time frame on it. So let's say you want to read a 100-page book, right? And you want to do it in a month, right? So go ahead and divide the pages by week. So you get about 25 pages per week. And then you say, okay, how realistically, how much time am I spending on Netflix versus reading? Then you can allocate your time, and that's part of your time management in that regard, right? And for some of us, like for me, it takes me a little bit longer to read pages, so I allocate a little more time to reading the book. And that's how I can make it a little bit of a smarter goal, which is a specific, measurable, realistic, and achievable for me, and you can definitely put a time frame on it. So that's just a little specific example, but just interrupting Dr. Stephanie and her exercise here.
Ah, that's a fantastic example. Thank you, Lazaro, for making it concrete in that way. That's a wonderful example. And once you've gone through and you've made, one part of your goal SMART, this is an invitation, no pressure here, but it could be interesting to see what are some small steps, what are some goals that your cohort have here. So if you're feeling up for it, please feel free in the chat. I'd love to take a look at what are some goals that you have? And then how did you break it down? What's one small step? And sure, I'll go ahead and in the meantime, answer this question. Could you explain the difference between achievable and realistic? Absolutely. So the difference is that achievable is looking at, is this small enough? And does this make use of the resources that you already have available to you? So it's more focused on what other resources might you need in order to achieve the goal. So if you were asked to complete this next step right now, do you have exactly what you need? So, going on Lazaro's example, why not, right? Have I already bought the book? Is it already in my hands? Do I already have a space where I like to read? Do I already have time allocated for it, et cetera? So that's what would make it achievable. Do I have the resources available to me? The realistic piece is this realistic with everything else that's going on around me? So any time commitments I might have, any projects I've already committed to, any other stressors that might be going on in my life right now. So one of the important pieces with this is knowing when you need to slow down, knowing when you need to take some stuff off your plate, knowing when it is not the time to put something on your plate versus I'm doing really well right now. Yeah, this is really interesting to me. I'm very motivated and I'd like to take this on. Okay, that's realistic versus I'm on the verge of burnout. Let me see if I can add this on. I hope that helps. If you're wanting more clarification, please continue asking. I'm happy to keep elaborating. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's a fantastic quote. Thank you for sharing that. Someone shared, I love the quote, keep your goals out of reach, but not out of sight. Wonderful. All right. And I'll just give another moment for anyone who's still working on that, wants to finish up. And if anyone is wanting to share in the chat, please feel free to do so. All right, so I'm going to move forward. Okay, so now we shift from, what do I do when I have this goal? All right, now we have we break it down into smaller steps, we make it smart, we look at these different aspects of how to make this feasible. So now there's this other piece there that's the accountability. And this, I really want to give a caveat here. A lot of times we hear the word accountability and we think criticizing ourselves, being harsh toward ourselves, being judgmental toward ourselves. Now, I try to embody the mindfulness that I teach as much as possible. I am an imperfect human, but I try. And that goes hand in hand with the idea of suspending judgment and noticing where it is not necessary. So there is a difference between judgment and accountability. Accountability helps us stay motivated. It helps us stay on track. Judgment is a pathway to shame. So how do we use accountability in goal setting? Well, my advice is figure out the most simple and enjoyable system that resonates with who you already are as a person. So if I were to say, tell me a little bit about how you keep track of your daily tasks. Tell me a little bit about how you keep track of your work projects or your class projects or your assignments. And I would get a ton of different responses, I'm sure. Some people prefer a planner. Some people prefer a wall calendar, a desk calendar. Some people prefer Asana, using a digital source like that. So instead of trying to create a whole new type of system, use what you know already works for you. Use what you know already helps you stay on track in other ways in your life. I have plenty of clients who don't use any of that and they just use their cell phone and they just have a calendar on their phone that they go by, or the reminders if you have an iPhone with the reminders app. Again, no need to add on a whole nother complication. Use what works for you. So choose a tool, preferably a tool that you already use, if not one that you think you could easily lean into. So some people prefer to lean into apps. Asana is the one that comes to mind with that. Some people prefer to lean into something written, as I mentioned, perhaps like a wall or a desk calendar or a planner. And others, and I did this, I actually did the bottom two throughout college and grad school, color-coded Post-it notes. And for me, there was something really satisfying about being able to rip that Post-it note off wherever I had it on the wall or on the desk, cross it off, and being able to kind of scrunch it up into a ball and then throw it in the garbage. It was really enjoyable for me to be yes. And now I have that free spot on the wall. And then, trying to see how much space I could create and then seeing how I could fill it up again and organize it. Again, I just used what resonated for me. I'm someone who enjoys color coding stuff anyway. And just leaning into it, make it work for you. Here's the second piece, the accountability, consistency. And this can be one that can really, really get in the way when we start to lean away from it. And the problem is a lot of times when people start to lose consistency, they lose momentum, they lose inspiration, they lose motivation, and they'll say, well, I may as well just give up now. So I want to challenge that a little bit. This is a gentle encouragement that when you've noticed that your consistency is lacking, just consider an invitation on the spot. Okay, but what if I lean back into it? What if this doesn't have to be like the end. This is not a period. This is a comma. What if I can just say, okay, let me lean into it again. Let me keep going with it, realizing that we're all human. Life gets in the way. So some ways to help you in your consistency. One of my biggest tips has been to dedicate regular time to plan each week. So whether you prefer to do it at the end of your week, whether you prefer to do it on the weekend, at the beginning of your week, I mean, honestly, whatever resonates with you, just choose a time and create a routine around it. Maybe you say, for an hour on, I don't know, Sundays, I'm going to like make myself a snack and sit down and just enjoy this and just give myself this time to plan what the rest of my week will look like. To take this time, right, to write all the tasks down. And then you want to be able to update it. And I more strongly suggest updating daily as opposed to weekly, because that will keep your momentum up. Now, with updating daily, that should clue you into how small your tasks should be, to how small these goals should be, right? We want these small wins and these small successes that will add up over time. You should be able to do an update daily. So now that we've looked at the logistical, we're going to shift into the emotional, into the mental, into the mindset. I want to share this quote with you all from Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm a fan of his. I follow him on LinkedIn. It's actually the only social media I'm on. And I find him to be incredibly knowledgeable in the field of being a series and multi-entrepreneur, a multi-passionate person. I find him to just be a wealth of knowledge in the fact that he's just like so real and authentic. And so this quote by him says, "We're at the dawn of an era where emotional intelligence will be far more important than technical skills." For a lot of people who are in the technical fields, this can be a little daunting to hear. And yet I have found again and again that the engineers who succeed the most are the ones who not only succeed within their field technically, but do hold that emotional intelligence to go hand in hand. And so if you can develop both, you are setting yourself up so well for success down the road. So we'll look at that a little bit. So this ratio, I actually originally took this from the master's degree that I did a lifetime ago in marriage and family therapy. And within marriage and family therapy, this is like a known statistic. For every it takes 4 positive interactions to neutralize 1 single negative interaction. So when I was working with couples, I would remind them of this, like take a moment to consider every time you have a negative interaction with each other. Research shows that it would require 4 positive interactions to neutralize that one. How are you guys doing? What does your checking account look like in your marriage, in your relationship? And here's the trick. It has to be authentic, not this fake, like, oh, let me real quick, like, fake a positive interaction to try and neutralize what just happened. And the interesting piece is that I took that with me and I actually started to use it when I worked with people one-on-one. And I found, and so this is like my own anecdotal from a decade of doing this, what I have found to be incredibly effective is this same ratio. So I'm offering it to you all. I have found that when you look at someone's inner self-talk, your mindset, the way that you explain the world to yourself to yourself, others to yourself, for every 1 negative interaction that you have, it requires 4 positive ones to neutralize it. So take a moment and consider, how often does your self-talk nurture your mentality and set you up for success? How often does it deplete your mindset? And keep in mind that this is the pathway to reaching your goals. So if you're going in the negative, it's no wonder that it's that much harder to reach your goals. So the question becomes, okay, how do we help boost this ratio a little bit in an authentic way that's meaningful, that will have impact? So we're going to take a look at that. And I'm seeing something in the chat real quick. Oh yeah, somebody else who loves Gary's quotes. Awesome. Oh, and you've seen it firsthand in your career. That's fantastic. I'm glad that this resonates. All right. So one way to do this is cultivating a mindset of gratitude. Gratitude is the underbelly of positive interactions, whether it's gratitude for something someone else has done for us, gratitude for the universe, gratitude for ourselves, gratitude for life itself. Positive interactions are founded on gratitude. And so if you're able to start cultivating that in your daily life, that is going to have an exponential effect on your ability to successfully achieve your goals. And it can be something really small, it can be something really big. The size of it does not matter, but it's, can you take a moment to appreciate where you're at? I'll give you an example. As a first-gen Latina, can I take a moment to appreciate it took a lot of hard work to get to where I am? And I am really proud of myself for it. And I know I still have a long way to go, and it was an imperfect road, and I learned tons along the way because of it. That's gratitude. It can also be something waking up every morning and taking a breath, and before reaching for your phone, just taking one breath and going, ah, okay, I'm here, you know, thank you, whoever and whatever you may think for that, right? I'm here again today. All right, let's make this count. Here's another way to cultivate gratitude, and this is leaning on mindfulness a bit, but present moment awareness, if that's something that you have all heard of, it's very much trending lately in the world of mindfulness. That goes hand in hand with gratitude. And present moment awareness is the ability to be fully present, fully focused in whatever it is that you are doing in that moment. So it means your mind is not thinking about the past, it's not thinking about the future, it is just fully in the moment. Now, there's another word for that you may have heard. It's called flow. When people say that they're in the flow, or like flow psychology, that's what it refers to. It's when time just seems to really quickly go by because whatever you're doing, you're fully immersed in it. It often goes hand in hand with being passionate with what you're doing. But that is also another way to cultivate gratitude. So it's, can I slow myself down and be fully present in this moment? So if you're in class, right? Can I stop worrying about anything else and only focus on exactly what it is to be sitting in this chair and listening and learning? Can I fully appreciate that? When you're eating, what would it be like to take one single mindful bite out of a whole meal? So many of us, and especially when we're in school, we're busy at work, we rush through eating, right? You're typically multitasking. We're like eating and like completing something at the same time, or texting at the same time, or what have you, right? Doing an assignment on the computer. What would it be like to pause, put everything else on hold and say, let me be fully present with one bite. One way to do that is pretend you're doing it for the first time. Pretend you're describing it to someone who has never encountered this thing before. Go through the 5 senses. How would I describe this one bite of you, whatever, right? Lasagna, salad, chicken, what have you, quinoa, like, okay, let me go through it. How would I describe how it looks? Let me look at the texture. Let me take a moment to fully engage with the texture, with the color, with the weight, with the way the light hits it. You can be silly and say, what does this, bite of food sound like? Does it make any sound when I hold it up to my ear for a moment? Okay, what does it smell like? How would I describe the aroma? Rich, deep tones, bitter, sweet, fruity, light. And you just keep going through. You put it in your mouth. Let me very slowly take a bite. How would I describe the taste? How would I describe the way that it feels? And then you swallow. That's mindfulness, literally in one bite. That's the cultivation of gratitude. So it can look like so many different things. There's just a few ideas for it. Now, here's another way that you can cultivate it as well. And this is a little bit more of a better known activity. So we're going to do this real quick as well. And it's called the rose, the bud, and the thorn. So like I said, this is trending right now as well. So this may be something that you're familiar with. And it is when you take a few moments, you take a situation that you've just gone through or experienced, maybe even one that you're currently going through, and you consider these 3 parts of it, and you intentionally give yourself a moment to assess. What is the rose? What is the bud? And what is the thorn? So the thorn, I'll work backwards. The thorn is a difficult aspect of this experience. Something, what does a thorn do when you touch it? Ouch. What is an ouch moment with this experience? What's something you're struggling with about it? What's something that you'd like to grow through with this? Then we look at the bud, and the bud is just that. So we're transitioning from the thorn to the bud. How can you grow from it? Or how are you hoping to grow from it? Or is there something that you're like, I'm starting to figure this out? That's your bud. And then at the top of the stem, it's the rose. What is something that has flourished as a result of this experience? What has something that has grown? What's something that you're thankful for? Now, notice I'm not saying something positive necessarily, right? But it's something that has grown, something that you've gained from it. If you went through a really difficult, let's say, relational interaction with someone, right? The end of that rose might be, I learned how to stand up for myself. I learned how to put down a boundary. I learned how to practice assertiveness. I learned I'm worth more. Or frankly, I learned that I need to start assessing the situation I'm in. And that would be a rose. So it doesn't necessarily have to be this like over the top positive piece, right? It's just what can you take away as a lesson learned? So we have these different ingredients for your successful goal setting. Now there's one part that's missing. I invite you to use the chat. I'd be curious to see if anyone can guess which one is missing. So we have knowing your obstacles, planning for them accordingly. We have taking an intentional breakdown of your goals. We have celebrating the small wins. We have finding ways to hold yourself accountable. We have that reminder to check the mindset ratio that you're using, positive to negative interactions. And we have cultivating moments of gratitude with intention, small little moments. Can anyone guess what last ingredient would be missing to successfully achieving your goals? Defining your why or your driving force. That is fantastic. Smart. Any other guesses? All right, I'll move forward. Oh, I think there's one more in the chat. Let me see. Using tools could be it as well. So in order to decrease the likelihood of failure as you're setting these goals, and I also want to say very, very rarely do people guess it, especially when we are achievement oriented. It's exhaustion and rest. And so this can be a tricky one. Oftentimes, oh, I really like that, Lazaro. Thank you. Yeah, leading with kindness. That would be a fantastic one as well. Yeah, so I should probably mention this list is not like, non-exhaustive. Like there are so many more that we can add to this, just like the ones that everyone mentioned already. Now, this is a crucial piece that especially young career professionals, students, like college students, grad students, will ignore. A lot of times for us in the helping field, I can share with you all being on the side of this equation that's like trying to support all of you, this can feel like an uphill battle. And I know what it's like to be on both sides because I am an achievement oriented person as well. And I was definitely a hard worker through school. And I was someone who proudly wore that badge of exhaustion, of saying, yes, I'm sleep deprived. And look how much I got done. Yes, I pulled an all-nighter and look what I got to do. Right? Like, yeah, I procrastinate, but that's fine. It's on purpose because I work really well under pressure. So I wait until the night before and then I, work on this paper and that's how I get an A. So I'm wanting to like not give the illusion that I'm some Zen person that has this all figured out. Like I have no high horse to stand on. But the research still points to this. Exhaustion is not normal. And a lot of us like to pretend it is. And a lot of our fields, a lot of our programs, a lot of our professors, a lot of our bosses like to pretend it is. I'm here to let you know it is not. Chronic stress and workplace burnout is everywhere that we look, especially ever since the pandemic hit. Unfortunately, it is among the worst side effects of the pandemic when we look at the mental, emotional repercussions of working remote, of, and I should specify that, of working remote as a response to a catastrophe, as opposed to working remote because you choose to, because it aligns with how you want, the lifestyle that you choose. So chronic stress is at an all-time high right now. Workplace burnout is at an all-time high right now. I'm sure we've all heard of the Great Resignation that is in response to these aspects. And the question remains, that's fantastic. You left a toxic workplace, right? You stood up for yourself. How are you going to make sure that doesn't follow you? Because it's not just the toxic workplace. They absolutely should be held accountable and they have some soul searching to do, but so do we. What are we going to do to protect ourselves from chronic stress and workplace burnout? Getting to that second bullet, this is a phrase that I have been guilty of saying before, that I have been told before, that I've heard a ton, which is, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead. You'll sleep when you're dead. Get this done. Get this done quick. Get this done well. And the irony is that what the research on sleep shows is exactly that, actually, that the less sleep you get, the shorter lifespan you will have. And so this just really speaks to the internal and external pressures that a lot of us feel to achieve and to just keep grinding. And oftentimes we really enjoy the grind. And so it becomes a balance there. How can you balance something that you're enjoying doing or you feel you have to, and your need to rest? So as I mentioned, rest is really underrated. We tend to think, if I work hard, I'll achieve my goals, right? Work hard as opposed to work smart. A lot of us think, I just have to get to this next milestone, right? I just want to get recognized. I just want this position. I just want this job title. I just want to graduate with honors. I just want to be able to get to this next step. And this is where we're shifting to talking about that achievement-oriented mindset and the ways that it can get in the way. So Rishika Tulsian is another person who I follow on LinkedIn. I find her to be fantastic. And this is a quote by her. The danger about having your job define your identity is the heartbreak when your job doesn't love you back. And we see it again and again. Someone leaves and that position is filled like that. Someone dies and the position is filled like that. The job will not miss you. The job will not remember you. You'll be lucky if the company does. So the onus is on us. Take a moment to consider how deeply intertwined your identity is with your achievements, how deeply intertwined your identity is with the work that you do. This tends to be really common in high achievement oriented people. This tends to be even more common in minority first gens. It's this idea that we saw our parents work really hard, we see our family work really hard, and we have been passed down this legacy and this value that hard work shows that you are a good person. It shows that you have value. It shows that you have worth. And anytime that you're not working hard, you're being lazy. And so considering that, but how is that impacting your health? How is that impacting your true ability to reach your goals? So this is an invitation to assess those habits that you may have. This is an invitation to stop glorifying how long you work, to build in taking breaks, knowing that they will actually help you to succeed. And this can go as far, this can be as literal as structured time off. And the research behind rest, because there is a whole body of research about this, shows that taking times to rest and relax actually help people to become much more engaged in the work that they do day to day and relationships that they're in. It helps increase productivity, and it helps you be much more effective at work. And so it's funny because a lot of times there's so much pushback, right? Like, well, if I stay still, I'll feel like I need to be doing something. Well, that just means you got to work on on the type of rest you're doing. It doesn't mean that you don't need the rest. And I also want to take a moment to highlight that there's a big difference between rest and relaxation. There's a difference between sleep and relaxation and rejuvenation and restoration. So let me give you an example. It is like the target number for sleep tends to be between 7 and 9 hours a night, right? And that's the time that your body needs to, like, your muscles to adapt to any work that you've done that day muscularly. It gives your body time to digest. It gives your mind time to work through and process, like, memory making information and knowledge that you have taken in. So from the physical standpoint, you need that amount of sleep for those processes to be complete. However, plenty of people will say that they sleep, but they still wake up feeling tired. And oftentimes the thought is, well, you need more sleep. Well, sometimes you do, but sometimes what you need is rest and restoration. So what are you doing to help yourself feel ignited once more? What are you doing to reconnect to who you are as a person and to what helps you feel alive? So when's the last time that you did an activity that you really enjoy? When's the last time that you indulged a bit and allowed yourself to just be, shifting from doing to being? That's the rest. That's the restoration, and that's the rejuvenation. So I'm going to get really specific with you here. And this is coming from the research. If any of you are interested in looking further into it, Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith. And so she found that there are seven types of rest. And so we're going to go through them real quick. And this is just an invitation to, as we go through this, consider which of these are missing, which of these are already there, which of these sound like they might resonate with you most. Are there ways that you might start to invite these into the way that you live your life already? Because that really is the key to making things stick. It's to embed them into the routines that you already have set. So these first ones really have a focus on slowing yourself down. So there's physical rest. So physically slowing yourself down. Now, this can be done actively or passively. Active forms of physical rest would be yoga, would be stretching, would be a massage. So something that's alleviating you while you're still being active. So I'll add to this list that many people find running to be very much helpful in feeling rested afterwards, because it alleviates a tension that they're holding, or doing a workout of some kind. So that would be added as well. When we look at passive physical rest, this is talking about things like sleep. This is talking about taking a nap. This is talking about something like, if you're someone who really enjoys baths, taking a nice long bath, listening to music while you do it. The next type of rest that helps you to slow down is mental rest. So along with this is the idea of taking breaks during your day, between classes, between projects, just allowing yourself moments. And lately, I read an article recently actually that talked about micro breaks. So something as small as 3 to 5 minutes, where you're saying, let me fully disengage. Let me disengage mentally. Let me disengage physically. So if you're sitting, do the opposite, stand, go take a walk. Something as simple as taking the garbage out, go make yourself a cup of tea, whatever it may be, but disengaging and then coming back to the work. Now, this I added because this is actually from my own anecdotal experience with my therapy and coaching clients, that a lot of times what I hear is, so when it's time to go to bed, I notice that it's really hard to wind down. I lay down and then I just have these thoughts racing and I can't go to sleep. And we start to dig a little bit. And when I say, okay, well, tell me about these thoughts. What are the themes behind these thoughts? What do they tend to be about? And we've realized time and time again that they tend to be planning or reminders. It's now that you've slowed down, your brain suddenly says, ooh, don't forget tomorrow we want to do this and this. Oh, and don't forget to do that. And the problem with this routine is that the brain starts to receive messages that it should not shut down yet because it needs to hold on to this to-do list. One really simple exercise that can help alleviate that is to find a spot where you hold or keep a notepad and a pen. Again, some people will do this on their phone, whatever resonates. Jot down some thoughts intentionally for 5 minutes before you lay down. So you're allowing yourself to have a little bit of a dump. You lay down. If you notice it coming again, you get up, you jot it down, and you lay down. Now, at first, this seems pretty tedious. Your brain will actually get really used to this, and it will actually respond to the brain dumping in those first 5 minutes so that it will become more and more rare that once you're laying, you'll say, oh, let me get up and write this down too. And what you're doing is you're sending yourself the message. It's okay. We can relax. We don't have to hold on to this because we've written it down now. Now it's already documented somewhere where I can look at it tomorrow. All right, the next types of rest are the types of rest that encourage you to change your surroundings. And there's some research behind this in addition to this particular study that talks about how changing your surroundings can have a really positive impact on your productivity, on your engagement, on your motivation. So one type of rest that falls into this category is sensory rest. And really what that means is, we're so inundated with electronics now. When and how are you intentionally allowing yourself to unplug? When are you allowing some senses to be shut down, some of that stimulation to come down, and just enjoying being in the moment, maybe going into nature? The other type of rest is creative rest. Now, this tends to be really, really important when people are working on projects that require innovation, that require creative problem solving. So some kind of design aspect to your projects. If you notice that you're hitting a block, you notice that you're not able to hit those goals that you're setting creatively, look at creative rest to help you. The key to reawakening your creativity is through rest. And that type of rest oftentimes is by reigniting the beauty that is accessible to you. So that can look like so many different things, right? That can look like natural beauty, which is kind of the go-to, right? Outdoor natural beauty. It can be the beauty of music. It can be the beauty of art. Whatever strikes you as something inspirational, allowing everything else to fall away and allowing yourself to engage and spend some time with that. Now, that goes hand in hand with another tip that I would have, which is use this to your benefit. Use this to inspire awe and wonder. So why not print out a picture if, let's say, visual is your thing and there's a scenery that tends to really help you bring peace to yourself, feel stable. Find a gorgeous picture of that. Put it somewhere where you can look, where you can re-anchor yourself in it daily, where you can appreciate it. Okay, and these last parts of rest.
Before we move on, there's a question.
Oh yeah.
About any details that you might have that actually happen with the brain on our bodies when we unplug from our digital devices before going to bed. So once again, do you have any details on what actually happens with the brain, our bodies, when we unplug from our digital devices before going to bed?
I don't have a deep amount that I could elaborate on right now, but I'll share what I do know, what I have read before, and what I've learned before. And that would be that for a lot of us, something as simple as the signals that go through our brain from the light of many screens signal that we should be awake. So obviously we associate light with being awake and darkness with being asleep. That's why we sleep at night. One of the reasons why we sleep at night. That's why it's much easier to sleep in the dark. And so when we're around screens all the time, our brains are telling us that we need to stay alert and we need to stay awake, which is absolutely fine, except in today's day and age, when you're in front of a screen for so much more of your day, your body goes into hyperdrive. it goes into overdrive, because now we need to stay super alert and super awake for these prolonged periods of time, at a higher state of alertness because of the intensity of the light that we're around, that's that artificial light. Now, as far stepping away from this idea of light, because I know now there's some electronics that come with these like filters and things that can help with that. So that's fantastic. Use those. Now we go to the other part, which is, this can be a little controversial, but it's, do you find digital devices to be nourishing or to be depleting? And do you find them to be, what's the word, invigorating? So stimulating, that's the word I was looking for, or relaxing. And so just by the very association that we make with the devices, we don't tend to make that association with devices as like, oh, now I can relax, right? We tend to associate devices with productivity, with being social, with gathering knowledge and data. And so the idea is that the longer you stay connected to that, the longer you're giving yourself conflicting messages. Let me try and relax and go to sleep while being around this device, which I associate with being awake and being social and gaining knowledge. And so it's this idea of wanting to separate that a bit, wanting to be very protective of your rest, wanting to be very protective of the space in which you sleep. And this goes off a little bit into something else that I'll share real quick that I didn't have embedded in the PowerPoint, which is exactly that, right? Protecting that. And that really does come down to the brain science and the body science. So if you're interested in that, I highly recommend looking into sleep hygiene research. I used to do workshops on sleep hygiene, and there really is a lot of data on that topic that says there are some really key tips that you can use to help yourself fall asleep. And that almost always comes down to create an environment that's only for sleep, and then protect it. And then create an environment that's only for work and protect that. That can get harder and harder when we're working from home, when not all of us have the luxury of saying like, I can have these in two separate spaces, but as much as you can, you want to do that. So ideally, the bed is only for sleep and sex. Everywhere else in the house can be for work. And again, helping the brain to make those associations and make those transitions more easily. I hope that helps a bit, Juan. So going back to the PowerPoint, the next two forms of rest are more about knowing what you need. And so looking at emotional rest, if you find that over and over again, you're feeling really irritable, you're having difficulty with focus and concentration, look at emotional rest. Emotional rest is the one that is linked to therapy, but not only therapy. It's linked to therapy because therapy is an outlet. It helps people to process. Now, therapy doesn't work for everyone, and it's not for everyone, and that is okay. It doesn't have to be. The idea behind it, though, is something that all of us as humans need. We all need emotional rest, and we all need a way to process and express ourselves. So whatever that looks like for you, within the realms of safety and respecting others. Does that mean journaling? And by the way, when I see journaling, I don't just mean like in a diary or in a journal. Literally, I have plenty of clients who journal on their computer and find it to be incredibly satisfying for them. It can be music, whatever it may be, but recognizing, identifying that outlet that helps you to express and process your feelings. The other is social rest. And so with this comes the idea of taking a hard look at the relationships in your life and considering, is this relationship depleting or is it nourishing? Now, a lot of times it can be both, so that's okay. It's looking at the percentages, but it's taking stock. How many depleting relationships take up your energy every single day? And what can you do to start to shift that ratio? Now I'm noticing the time and I am wrapping up. I just want to let you all know we just have a couple slides left and then we'll shift into question and answer. This last type of rest allows you to identify and anchor. So this type of rest is spiritual rest. Now, spiritual in this sense does not mean religious. It actually means just connecting to a deeper sense of purpose and belonging in your own internal essence. What do you need to do to feel that you serve a purpose here on this earth? What do you need to do to sense that what you're doing has meaning for you, for perhaps others, for a cause that you're passionate about? And if you're wanting to look further into spiritual rest, I would look into values and values alignment. That's something else that's also like another specialty of mine. I could easily nerd out on, but I won't today. But it's the idea of noticing what brings you meaning, what helps you feel that you're living a life that's meaningful, and really anchor into that. Okay, so as a wrap up, here are the ingredients to your successful goal setting. So it's knowing your obstacles, planning for them accordingly, having an intentional breakdown of your goals, and that means making them smart. Celebrating the small wins, creating some processes, leaning on what already works for accountability, checking your mindset ratio, positive to negative self-talk, cultivating moments of gratitude with intention, and resting with intention in a way that fits your lifestyle. So lastly, I would love to be in touch with all of you. As I mentioned earlier, the only social media I'm on is LinkedIn, but please feel free to find me on there. I'm very active on there. I actually plan to start posting very soon. I'm working on a strategy calendar. So soon you'll be seeing regular consistent posts from me on like mental health tips on stress management, resilience building, mindfulness, being a first gen Latina in this world and like, pushing through and reaching your goals, that kind of thing. So you can find me on LinkedIn. That is my email. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions at all. I also offer coaching in groups and one-on-one, in addition to the training and the consulting that I do. And as I mentioned, my website should be up and running shortly. And if any of you are on Clubhouse, I am actually on Clubhouse as well. So you'll often find me in different rooms talking about mindfulness. And thank you all so much for your attention. I hope that this has been useful and helpful. It's my highest hope that you would thrive in 2022. And if there's any way that I can support you along the way, please do let me know. So that being said, I'd be happy to take questions. I'll stop the share now.
Thank you, Dr. Stephanie Palacios, for this wonderful presentation. Before the questions, I'd definitely like to acknowledge you for the wonderful information. It seems like a lot, but it was well structured and you took the time to go through it all. And I hope that everybody found it beneficial. And this is about mental health to start setting your goals up for success. So with that, let's see if we can take a couple questions from individuals at this point. So do we have any individuals with any questions? Feel free to open up your mic. Don't be shy. She's here for us at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question, if it's going to start.
Yeah.
So for the 7 types of rest, and that sometimes maybe one may weigh more than others. Personally, in your opinion, what do you feel has more of a resonance with you? Like if one's stronger than the other or something along those lines?
Now, are you asking like me in my personal life or like the one that I would suggest for other people?
I guess both probably.
Okay, sure. So me in my personal life, I would say the mental rest tends to be a big one for me. I tend to be very cognitive. I tend to really love staying kind of up in like the metacognitive areas and really like analyze things. And so I have to very intentionally take rest. And I notice that there's a very strong correlation with allowing myself to unplug from the thinking and just be in the moment. And I definitely do like the mindful like bites of food, the mindful walking. I'll like take a walk. I live in Denver. I'll take a walk through Denver and just like take in the sights and just fully allow myself to just like explore as if I were a little kid for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and then go back to my apartment. And I notice that allows me to once again fully mentally engage and to engage even more so than I had before. So that would be mine. Now, as far as the tip for other people, I would actually use a kind of similar deduction process as the one I just described, which is notice what kind of person are you? What do you tend to use up the most as far as your capacities? You know, is it the mental? Is it the emotional? Is it the creative, etc.? And that tends to let you know what type of rest would actually suit you best. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I have a question.
sure.
So, hi, I'm Sharon. Thank you so
Hi.
much for your presentation.
Absolutely.
So my question is like, how often should we review our SMART goals, or even more, like how often should we even make our SMART goals?
Excellent question. You know, I am tempted to give the bland answer of like, it depends, make it your own, but I will try and be a little more specific than that. My advice would be anytime that you notice that you have a goal, that is like the activation button, right? Of like, I have a goal, let me make it SMART. Anytime that you're noticing a task that you have ahead of you, a task that will require multiple steps, it's more than, you know what, let me complete this right now. That's when I would consider engaging the SMART formula. So if it's, all right, I have to do this thing, but I know that in order to do that, I have a few other things to do first. That should be the activation button of, okay, let me make this SMART. Let me make sure that these things I have to do first are actually given enough attention, time, specificity, resources, etc. So that should be like the indicator for how frequently to do it. Now, as far as reassessing, I love that you bring that up, because reassess all the time, reassess as often as needed. It is very much often the case where someone will say, I broke it down, but I'm still struggling. I'm still procrastinating. I'm still getting caught up in perfectionism. My response would be, take whatever you're struggling with and break that one down. Reassess, break it down again.
I'm gonna interject and put my little perspective on this as well. For young professionals and for students, every year as a industry personnel, you get a performance appraisal. So every year you have to set goals. Every year you have to prove or show some sort of achievement, right? But there's also an additional part of it that a lot of corporations don't really tell you that human resources provides. It's called an IDP, Individual Development Plan. And that in itself is your plan for your personal professional development. It doesn't necessarily have to be with your particular job. You can talk about whether you want to, if you're a lead engineer, design engineer, and your goal is to go ahead and be a manager or supervisor, you can put that as a goal. And then you have the SMART goals of a timely fashion. What are you doing this quarter to achieve or set up the next step? Along with that IDP, you also seek out a mentor to guide you. And this goes into the accountability that Dr. Stephanie Palacios mentioned. Those mentors or those are your accountability. As you say, okay, I'm going to 3 months down the line. So when you meet with them, they kind of ask you, or they ask you, what are you doing and how are we doing? And then you revise your goals depending on what you've achieved, and they understand that there's things that get in the way, life, work, etc., and you modify and revisit those. So I hope that answers your question a little more in the professional aspect of it. As a student, you have your teachers, professors, where you have due dates for specific projects, and those are your accountability, and that's how you measure your goal getting towards your degree. And I believe that might answer the question a little more. We have a question from Angel. Angel Perez, I don't know if you want to ask it yourself or I'll read it the best that I can. Okay, so I'll go ahead and read it. This is what he said. He is asking, how do you incorporate journaling or like meditating into your everyday routine? Does it need to be consistent, or is it okay to not take these mental rest or breaks every day? Because I get this.
Lázaro, I don't know if it's just my end, but I stopped being able to hear you. Okay, I'm seeing other people nod. You know what though? I can read it. Oh, hi, Angel.
Can you hear me correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just read out my question. So I started joining the meeting late, but I wanted to ask you, how do you incorporate journaling or like meditating into your everyday routine? Does it need to be consistent, or is it okay to not take these mental rest or breaks every day? Because I feel like I get discouraged to continue trying because I can't stay consistent. Or do you have any tips to stay consistent?
Sure. Okay, so several questions. Let me break them down for a minute. No, you're fine. And I'm looking at your message as well, so I can like direct myself. So I'll go through these. So as far as how do you incorporate journaling or meditating into your everyday routine? So I would divide those into two very separate categories, simply because meditating is a very intense, very involved process. And so it's very different if you're someone, and I don't know where you are on this spectrum, but if you're someone who's brand new to it and who's like, I've heard that this is a good thing, how do I incorporate it? Versus if you're someone who's like, I've been doing this for 5 years, I just have trouble sticking with it. So when it comes to meditating, you want to pick mindfulness over meditation, and start with mindful moments during your day. If you want to launch into meditating, it would be a 2 to 3 minute meditation every single day, but 2 to 3 minutes, and that is it. And once you are in the rhythm of doing 2 to 3 minutes for about 4 weeks, then you bump it up to 3 to 5 minutes. So notice that I'm not saying start off doing a 40-minute meditation and do it every day. That's setting yourself up for failure. Now with the journaling, it could be really similar, right? If you're someone who already journals, that's totally different than someone who's like, ooh, that sounds good. I think I'd like to give that a try. If you'd like to give it a try, again, carve out for yourself something that seems really manageable. And as far as whether you should do that every day or not, that really has to do with how often you need that kind of expression. Some people need it every day. Some people 3 times a week, like, hey, I'm going to get into this routine. I'm going to do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So then if something happens on a Tuesday, they're like, ooh, I'm going to write about this tomorrow. And that works. But having that routine actually does provide, neurologically, it provides a rest and it provides comfort, because you now know that you can lean into this and that you're going to give yourself that time. And so that's why the consistency is key, because with inconsistency comes, there's actually this process where you'll start to trust yourself less. And so you'll lean into it less. So as far as feeling discouraged when you notice that you're not being consistent, that happens to all of us. We are all human. That can be really difficult. And I did mention this earlier. It's not a big deal though. And the idea is just allow yourself to notice when it's happened and consider suspending judgment. Consider suspending criticism. It does you no good. And consider just saying, what if I were to lean into this again? And in mindfulness, there's this saying that says, it doesn't matter if your mind wanders away during a meditation 1,000 times, as long as you've brought it back 1,001. And so it is not the going away. It is not the losing consistency that's the problem. It's, did you come back afterwards? If you've come back, you repair the damage. And so just remembering that I can repair this. I can repair this by coming back. So that would be what I would say on that piece. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my pleasure.